Today's lesson is going to go over slope and y-intercept. Now, there's lots of stuff intertwined in this lesson, but the main things that you need to know is what is slope, what is y-intercept, and how do I find both of them. So if you would go to your star chart to right here where it says slope of a line, this is your formula that you use every single time you want to find slope. What is the other formula that you can use, and we write it right here? Say it loud. Rise over run. Write it down because you're going to use it today if you want to use that. You get to choose which formula you use based on what's going to work, okay? The only other thing that you need to know for today from your star chart is y equals mx plus b. You must know that the m is the, I want everybody to say it, the m is the slope and the b is the y-intercept. It is very, very important that you know that. And you're going to need to know that next year for algebra as well. All right, so let's go to our notes. And on the first example, they want you to find the slope and the y-intercept, and then they want you to write an equation. All right, so what is this right here? Is it a graph? Is it a word problem? Or is it a table? This is a table. So how would I find slope of a table? One of these formulas, which is the one I would pick? This one. Okay, this isn't going to work. You can't do rise over run. So you have to use this formula. So write your formula down. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And let's refresh our memory how to do it. When you use this formula, you only need 2 coordinates. They gave you 4. So you get to pick which ones you want to use. I usually use the first 2. Or if there's negatives, I'll try to not use them, just because. So these are all what? These are all x's, so I have to label this x and this x. So I'm going to call this my first x and my second x. These are all y's, so I'm going to call this my first y and my second y. Once you are there, you simply put in the numbers to the formula. The formula says y2 at the top left. So which number would I write? 6 minus y1. So what number am I going to write? 4. Over, and then x2 has to go on the bottom left. So 3 minus x1, which is 0. When you put this in your calculator, if you want to put it all at the same time, simply do it in alpha y equals. So everybody open your calculator and do alpha y equals option 1. Type in 6 minus 4 on the top and 3 minus 0 on the bottom. And that is your slope. 2/3. Could you write that as a decimal if it asked you to? You would just hit what? Math, decimal, enter. It does whatever way the question wants you to write it. So my slope is 2/3. Now, who remembers how to find the y-intercept? What is y when x is 0? This right here is the y-intercept. Oops, there you go. The reason is if I was to graph that, that's where it would touch the y-axis. Does that make sense? So the y-intercept is always the easiest piece. It's simply 4. I'm going to say it again. The y-intercept is where the line touches the y-axis. And if I was to graph that, if y'all look, y'all don't have to graph this, but that's 0, 4 right here. Okay, and then 3, 6 would be like here, and so your line would look something like this, and that's where it touches the y-axis. All right, so if you want to write an equation, I need all eyes on the board. Remember that an equation is in y equals mx plus b. Your slope is your m, your y-intercept is your b. So to write this equation, I would write y equals, and instead of m, I would write 2/3 times x, and then plus my b. Y'all all remember this, right? Okay, let's look at the next problem. What kind of picture do I have here? Do I have a word problem, a table, or a graph? A graph. Now, if you want to do slope formula, you can, or you could use what on this picture? I could use rise over run. It does not matter which one I do. I personally would choose rise over run. Okay, so you need 2 points. Looks like those two are good points. Okay, my rise, remember when you do your rise, you always start at the bottom dot and rise up even with your next dot, and then count the squares. So 1, 2, 3 is my rise. And then my run is 1, 2, 3, 4. Who can tell me what I'm missing? Say it. A negative sign, because the line is going down from left to right. So if you forget that negative sign, the whole problem is wrong. Now, who can tell me how to find the y-intercept on a graph? It's where the line does what? Touches the y-axis. So here is the y-axis. Where did that line touch the y-axis at? At positive 3. Now that I know my slope and y-intercept, I can write an equation. The slope is always the m. The y-intercept is always the b. All right, so how would I write this? Y equals negative 3 over 4 x plus 3. Perfect. So when you're taking your STAR test, one of the questions might simply be, what is the slope? And that's it. And you just got to figure out which way to find it. You might have a question that says, what is the y-intercept? Okay? What are other words that they use for slope and y-intercept, though? What's a word they like to use for slope? Rate. And that is a question you're going to see today. It's going to say, what is the rate? And rate just means find the slope. And the other thing for y-intercept is starting point. So just be wary and pay attention of how they ask for it. It means the exact same thing. Okay, look at the next example. They gave you what? What is this called? What is this picture? What is this? It's y equals mx plus b, but it's called an equation. So could you tell me the slope in this equation? How did you know that was the slope? Because it's in the m spot. So this would be your slope. Which one would be your y-intercept? Okay, and I heard somebody say 6, but what has to go with it? The minus sign. And then it says equation, will you just write exactly what you just did? All right, let's do the last 3 super fast. Okay, this is a graph. I like to start with my y-intercept. Do y'all see where this line is touching the y-axis? At -4, right here. Okay, to do slope, I'm going to do rise over run. My rise is 1, 2. My run is 1, 2, 3, 4. Is it positive or negative? Because it's going up. And 2/4 is not simplified, is it? So I put in my calculator, simplifies it to 1/2. And if you would have noticed, I could have used those two dots and gotten 1/2. So it gives you the same answer. In my equation, y equals 1/2 x minus 4. Or plus -4, just not two negatives. All right, next one. Which one's the slope? So if this is y equals mx plus b, which one's the slope? 3. Which one's the y-intercept? -6. And then, of course, the equation, you just rewrite it. Okay, the last one is very important that we talk about it because I see a lot of students make mistakes with negatives. Okay, do y'all already see the y-intercept? What is y when x is? So what's my y-intercept? All right, but let's do slope. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So here's my x1, my x2, my y1, my y2. This is where I see students make mistakes, and it's because it has negatives. Okay, so here we go. -7. Now what would I write? Right here. So it says y2, what's next? Minus. Now y1. Well, what is y1? I have to write that -5. That is very important. And my calculator will do the rest of the work for me, okay? Over, what's x2? 0. Now what do I write? Minus, and what is x1? That is exactly how you write it and exactly how you put it in your calculator. So I go to alpha y equals, and I do -7, and then make sure you hit your subtraction button, then -5. And then 0 subtract -2. And that's my slope. Now, whenever you have a slope of -1, they won't always write it. A lot of times you'll see your equation look like this, because what's in front of that x right there? But what number could go right there? Yeah, but they won't always put it. Just know that it is there, okay? All right, so I'm going to pass out your assignment. We're going to go through and look at a few things, and then you'll have 10 questions. If you look at each question, it's going to tell you what it wants. Everybody look at number 1. What does it want? The slope. But look at number 2. What does it want? Now look at number 2's y-intercept. Can y'all see it? It's not on a whole number, is it? And that's why I told you in the Google Classroom I put answer choices, and only one of those answer choices could be the possible answer. Because it is what? It's between 0 and 1. So it has to be something like 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8. Do you see what I'm saying? But only one of the answer choices in the Google Classroom will work. Okay, turn the page. Number 3 is the main one I wanted to talk to you guys about. This was on a STAR test. It's been on a STAR test every year, and my students always miss it. And it's one of the easiest questions. Do y'all see this? What is this called? This is called a table. Do you have a button in your calculator that will give you a table? Yes. So anytime you have a table, you can use your y equals button. Now, to use your y equals button, you need equations, right? So what you would do is on each answer choice, you would write an equation. So everybody look at choice A. David originally had $0 in his savings account. He's going to add $45 each week. How would I write that equation? Y equals, which one of those numbers would get an X? So 45X plus 0. You don't have to write the plus 0. So I would go to my calculator and I would push the Y equals button, and I would type in 45X plus 0, and then I would go to my table by hitting second graph, and I would see if it matches this table. So I would say, okay, when X is 2, What is y? Did that match? Yep, but do I pick that answer? No, I got to go check when x is 5. What is y? In my calculator, it's 225, but here it's 150. So A is out. So then I would try B. Let's write an equation. David had 30 in his account. He's going to add 30 each week. How would I write that? 30x plus 30. So could I go check that one in my calculator? Okay, the last, number 4. What's my clue word? What's my clue word on number 4? And what does that really mean? Slope. Okay, and the last one I want to go over with you is number 5. Number 5 looks like a hard question, but it's not. It wants to know which of these slopes would give you that slope. Do y'all remember how to do this? You simply find the slope by doing rise over run. Okay, so everybody look, the rise has to go up and down. This is my rise, it's positive 2. This is my run, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's positive 5 because my line is going. So now all you have to do is figure out which answer choice, when you put it in your calculator, would give you that slope. Okay, is everybody good? You have 10 questions. Remember, number 2, you're going to need your Google Classroom to see those answer choices. Okay, get busy, and I will check your answers if you bring them up to me.